come back for the second. India have won the test match. India have won the series.
They're going to get back for two. India at home. Lords goes wild.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the 81 All Out podcast. This is Siddhartha Vaidyanathan, and I'm joined as usual today by my co-host Mahesh Sethuraman. Hey Mahesh.
Hey Siddhi, good to be back.
Good to be back and delighted today to be joined by one of India's foremost cricket writers, a veteran who has written about the game for over 4 decades, and someone who you can always trust to put matters in perspective, Suresh Menon. Thank you so much for joining us, Suresh.
Thank you for having me, Sid.
Wonderful to have you. And for all those, I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast has read Suresh Menon at some point. If not, you definitely should. Suresh has been a cricket writer and editor since the early 80s. His columns have always been a delight to read for me because they are both extremely erudite as well as they contain light touches of humor. And, humor is something that we often lack in cricket writing. And I'm always drawn to people who can look at the game in this manner. Suresh has worked for a number of prestigious publications, including Deccan Herald, Indian Express, The Pioneer, Gulf News, New Indian Express. Also, he was the founding editor of the Wisden India Almanac that came out first in 2013. And he continues to write a perceptive column in The Hindu about various aspects of the game. Also, in some good news, he's coming out with a new book of essays that is likely to be published in January. And it's delightfully going to be titled, "Why Don't You Write Something I Can Read?" So, yes, looking forward to that. And today we're here to talk about a book that Suresh published in 2011, which was his biography of the great Indian cricketer Bishan Bedi. It's called Bishan, Portrait of a Cricketer. And it's a delightful read about one of cricket's great practitioners, somebody who turned bowling, especially spin bowling, into a high art, and brought so much romance into the game, and also, treated the game in a way that not many do in this day and age of professionalism and cutthroat competition. Bishan Bedi was somebody who comes across in this book at least as somebody with a really big heart, played the cricket with an air of magnanimity, and was always ready to applaud the opponents as much as he was to applaud his teammates. Of course, purely as a bowler, Bishan Bedi was one of the greatest bowlers the game has seen. And this book delves into the art of his bowling really well. For somebody like me who was not privileged to watch Bishan Bedi bowl, this book gave me such a wonderfully nuanced perspective as to what a great, great bowler Bedi must have been. Apart from which, of course, it talks about Bedi's unflinching ability to call a spade and not really worry about what he was saying to whom and when, but to just say the things as he saw it. So, Suresh, having said all that, let's go back a bit in time, maybe to when you started watching the game, and about your early influences. Somebody like Bishan Bedi, watching him for the first time must have just been straight out of a magic show.
I think it was straight out of a magic show. I think that's a very good description because at a very young age, I don't know if I can say my generation, but certainly I was influenced by the romantic writing of cricket, the Neville Cardus sort of school. And when you're very young and you don't have certain immediate substitutes, shall we say, for the kind of people that Cardus wrote about. When I saying very young, I'm talking about maybe 8 or 9 years, and you don't have, and these Cardus pieces appeared in Sport and Pastime, which was a predecessor to Sports Star of today. And you needed, when Cardus spoke about, I don't know, Till Delsley or Wilfred Rhodes or whatever, whom I had no idea about, then I would substitute those names for Indian names. So when he talked about Wilfred Rhodes, I had not yet seen Bishan. I'd imagine Bishan. And when he spoke about, I don't know, great off spinners or Jim Laker, I would imagine Erapalli Prasanna. Nobody was writing about Indian cricket with that same kind of passion, with that same kind of uh, informed fanship, let's say, as people like Cardis and Thompson were. And it was great fun for me to use. But I had no clue what Bishan bowled, what he bowled like, what his bowling was like. I had no idea what Tiger Pataudi batted like, but I knew what Jim Swanton had said, I think basically, again, I will not say my generation, but certainly I was strongly influenced by the English writers because they were the only ones that were actually available here at that time. And when I first saw Bishan, it must have been in the 70s. I saw him play a Ranji final in Bangalore. Before that, I saw him. I was walking down the street in Mysore near a cricket ground, and I turned and I suddenly saw Bishan bowling there. He was playing some kind of a charity match there, and this was incredible because I mean, who'd have thought that such things happened? So I spent the day watching him. But I think Bishan and I really got to know each other well when he was the cricket manager for the New Zealand tour in 89-90. And that's when we got close. Although I must tell you this, we did play a match together. Bishan and I played a match together. This was when David Gower's team came here to India, and those days they had this wonderful tradition of foreign journalists versus Indian journalists, a cricket match between the visiting journalists and the local journalists. And that's because there was always a rest day of the test match, and the journalists played their match on the rest day, and very often players came to see us play, so that if we complained about something they did, they always had a thing. But I saw you in that match, and what did you do, kind of stuff. It was a happy occasion. I mean, David Gower, for example, came to watch us play that day, and what had happened was, I think there had been 2 games earlier. Indian journalists and the Indian journalists were thrashed because the English journalists had a man named John Jameson, who of course had not just thrashed Indian journalists, he had thrashed the Indian bowlers in a test series. So not only did Jameson thrash the Indian bowlers, I think he broke the fingers of one of the reporters and stuff like that. So it was pretty heavy stuff. And then they came to Chennai for the test match. And very casually we said, can we play 1 or 2 selectors just to sort of make up the team, because you keep injuring all our players. So he said yes. They said, yeah, sure, play who you want. So of course the selectors were Bishan Bedi and Chandu Bode, and we said thank you very much. So Bishan played for the journalists that year, and John Jameson, I think he got him in 2nd or 3rd delivery. John Jameson looking to play across, edged and caught by Chandu Bode at gully. So it was a complete test match dismissal. And for a while I was at slip. I watched Bishan from there. Then for a while I went and fielded at extra cover, and I could watch Bishan from there. And of course I was sold. I mean, there was no. And Bishan must have been already in his 40s by then, and he had put on a lot of weight, but there was something. I think it was Mike Braley who said about players like Colin Cowdrey and Bishan Bedi. He said that they might have been unathletic in appearance, but the one thing they could do, they did it as gracefully as anybody else. Colin Cowdrey batted beautifully, Bishan bowled beautifully, and it had nothing to do with the weight you put on or the weight you carry. So that was a terrific introduction to Bishan. And then of course, as I said, 89 we were in New Zealand together, and I think that was 89, 90, and then soon, of course, by then, and I'd been reporting Ranji Trophy, and Bishan was involved in some way or the other with the national team, either as the coach or if nothing else, as a critic in chief. So there was always something to go back to Bishan for. And then when I landed in Delhi as the sports editor of the then undivided Indian Express. Then Bishan and I got really close because he wrote a column for us. He was one of those few cricketers who actually wrote his own column. He came to the office, he sat down and, wrote the column there. And we had I think one of the things that got us close was the fact that we had similar ideas on the game. We had similarly old-fashioned, so to say, romantic notions of the game. We disliked the same people, which is always a very strong bond between people. So it was, and we've always been in touch ever since. And when I was in Dubai for Gulf News, again I saw a wonderful. Again, Bishan must have been in his 50s, mid-50s, or approaching 60.
That's the anecdote you write about in the book?
That's right. He was bowling to. I don't think I mentioned the batsman, but actually it was Mushtaq Mohammed. He was bowling to Mushtaq Mohammed and drew him out and took his off stump. And it's a complete. I couldn't believe that this could happen. That anybody could do this. Least of all, a man who was this old bowling to a man who had played so much, international cricket. So I've always had this sort of, but slowly over a period, I realized that it wasn't just his bowling, as you mentioned earlier. There was a whole lot more to Bishan than this. Of course, he put people off by his sort of frankness and outspokenness. But I think there were very few people in Indian cricket, Indian sport, in fact, who actually did that. And I've always admired somebody who did that. And anyway, so that's the early sort of Bishan story.
Yeah, I mean, this lovely introduction and setting of the stage. The one point I wanted to, touch on is that there is, whenever you hear of a great cricketer, one of the things you also hear of is that somebody who saw them at a much later stage in their life, and yet they could get the import of their greatness. Like people talk about C.K. Naidu in his 60s.
That's right.
And Raj Singh Dungarpur will always mention how he saw C.K. Naidu's last match. And even then he was able to do this. Or Don Bradman batting at a much later age. And this anecdote in your book about Bishan Bedi, it doesn't say Mushtaq Mohammed. It makes it even more romantic because they were teammates, right?
That's right.
In Northamptonshire.
That's
right. You mentioned how he actually bowls a ball that looks like the arm ball, but because he manipulates his wrist in the last minute, it actually goes away. And at the age of 53, and then the interesting postscript to that is how he says, I got Ian Chappell out for 99 in a test match with exactly that delivery.
Yeah.
So it's almost like watching somebody at a later stage of their life still able to retain the craft. I mean, there is this journalist in Delhi, T.R. Ramakrishnan, who once told me that, Bishan Bedi was just out in the nets one day, bowling to journalists again, throwing the ball up. And Ramakrishnan made this mistake for driving him quite beautifully through the covers for 4. And he says, the next ball came at me with such pace that the stumps just went flying. I mean, it was the faster one that just blew him away. He says, here's this guy, 2 steps. He's just lobbing the ball. And then he's like, okay, that's enough of you now.
No,
yeah.
Like all great bowlers, he understood batsmanship, which is not something you can say for a lot of great batsmen. He understood. There's a lovely story about him, Jeff Miller, the English off spinner, they were playing a game and he was at the non-striker's end, and Bishan told him, you're a spinner. What you need is a loop. And then he actually bowled it and showed him what a loop was, as distinct from flight, or So it's a and he's been that way. He's been an open sort of textbook. I mean, anybody could approach him at any time, and he's happy to talk cricket or give advice on the game, on spin bowling. And I think it's a rare temperament. I find that incredibly charming, and this is what the game is about. This is what we like to believe the game is about, and he personified that for me.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of spin bowling is there is this thought of this, this conception about it being mystical and it being something that the bowlers is hiding from you. But actually speaking, some of the great spinners, if you take Shane Warne or if you take Bishan Bedi or if you take many of the great spinners, they told you exactly what they were doing.
Yes.
They didn't hide anything.
No, Alan Knott has a lovely story about how when Bishan was bowling to him in the middle of a test match, and Alan Knott was sweeping him, Bishan told him, "That's not the way to play me. You should play me straight." Can you imagine that?
And then Alan Knott says, "But we had a problem playing him straight."
Yeah,
too.
and we had a problem playing him straight. Wonderful. I mean, you not only have to set challenges for yourself. Not only it's a wonderful mix of lack of ego and ego, because the lack of ego is telling you, okay, I can sort of let me bowl my stuff. The ego is telling you, not only will I tell him what to do, I will beat him at that game, and that's terrific.
It's terrific. I mean, there's also this other lovely anecdote you have in the book about Bishan Bedi bowling to Viv Richards in a county game.
Yeah.
I mean, and what a treat that must have been to watch, and how Richards continuously is going after him, hitting him for fours and sixes, but in the end, Bedi gets him because he's still flighting the ball.
Right. And Bishan's argument is beautiful. He says, I think Viv Richards made some 35, 36 in that game.
38, I think, yeah.
38. And Bishan's argument is that it's worth giving him 38 runs if his first class average is, 55, 60 at that stage, and he's out. I get him for 38. That means I've done my job.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's, one of the things, I mean, I wanted to bring it up later, but I think we should talk about it now itself, is that, there is just watching like a bowler like Bishan Bedi bowl, and I'm talking back in the 70s and maybe even people who saw him in the 60s, it must have been like such an outlandishly different experience for people, right? I mean, now you have television everywhere and you're seeing bowlers from all across of different styles, but here to see a bowler, of course, there was the look with the patka and things, but that is only one aspect. The other aspect is he's running in diagonal, which you said was not that common because Vinu Mankad and many other bowlers ran in straight, then the diagonal, and then to see him toss the ball up and have all these variations and to mix it up, and then to hear batsmen actually talk about him, it must have been like something like, I don't even know what the word to use. It's just something magical.
No, absolutely. I think the whole idea of a spin bowler getting a batsman has something. I think T.G. Vaidyanathan, the Bangalore professor, was the one who said it first. He said there's something feminine about spin bowling as opposed to fast bowling, and therefore, for a batsman who thinks of himself as this, macho and this sort of tough sports person, to get beaten and dismissed by this feminine aspect of the game, it does something to his mind. I mean, a Dennis Lilly or an Andy Roberts can be physically threatening, or a Malcolm Marsh can be physically threatening. Bishan and Pras and Chandra, Venkat, they were not physically threatening but they did something to your mind when you couldn't work them out. Richard till I don't know, last year was still saying that he still hasn't been able to figure out Chandra. He played him some 40 odd years ago. So there is a beauty about this that and Bishan both personified it as well as brought it to the fore as this one of those wonderful arts of the game.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite player quote in that book is that lovely line that Gary Sobers has, which he says he took the weight of the ball, and what an absolutely poetic way to talk about bowling.
Yes, stunning and to Sobers was Bishan's great boyhood hero. In fact, Bishan actually was, because of course initially he wanted to be a fast bowler. took somebody to tell him, took his coach to tell him, listen, you know, stick to, you know, orthodox left arm spin, you know, you don't, and then he was also lucky that at various stages he had the right advice from people, from his coach, from his colleagues, from the captain of his college team, Khalsa College, Gurpal Singh, who was the one who told him, you know, forget all this nonsense about bowling fast and stuff, stick to spin. So I think it was important. It was important that, I mean, we don't have enough. We don't pay enough respect, or we don't give the person the early, not necessarily coach, but the early influencer of a great player, you know, his due in most cases, because very often, of course, we simply don't know who they are or what they did. But it's Bishan till today will always, you know, give credit to Gurpal Singh and the people who actually made the difference. Gyan Prakash, his coach, and I find all that extremely inspiring, for want of a, you know, better word, really, because it's I know, and you know, you've been on the circuit long enough, you know, of players who swing the other way. I mean, who could kick away the ladder once, you know, they've climbed it, and that's what makes a lot of us cynical. And then along comes Bishan Bedi, and you know that, you know, God's in his heaven, all's right with the world, sort of thing.
Absolutely. And you know, one of the other things that, of course, adds to that whole aura of Bedi is the fact that he bowled with three other great bowlers, great spinners. I mean, now we are living in an era of, you know, riches in terms of fast bowling. Every team seems to have 2-3 really, really good fast bowlers. And, you know, it's harking back to the 70s and 80s when West Indies and Australia and all produced fast bowlers. But I wonder if we will ever find a time, and of course I hope we do, but where 4 great bowlers play for one team. I mean, how phenomenal must that have been, especially for you, you know, watching the game at that stage or listening to the game on the radio, to have this this abundance of riches of spin bowling.
Absolutely true, because those days, certainly in the 70s and earlier, almost every Ranji team, or let's say the top 10 teams in the Ranji Trophy, all of them had bowlers who could have played Test match cricket for India. You had Shivalkar, you had Rajinder Goyal. Here in Bangalore, we had Vijay Krishna, who had a lot of time for, because he was genuinely gifted bowler, left arm spinner. Hyderabad had Ram Narayan, who bowled for Hyderabad for Hyderabad in a team which was a very strong batting unit, and it was there was always Gujarat had the Joshi and later Dilip Doshi, and there was always any team had a decent level first class bowler who with some luck might have played for India, and as well as a top class bowler who would have played international cricket had he been bowling in any other country. And that was the riches. I mean, now we're talking about the fast bowling riches, and that suddenly became, and not suddenly, that became the sort of Indian tradition then, you know. Spin bowling and attractive wristy batting then became the ethos, is the what Indian cricket is all about.
Yeah, and how different they were, right? I mean, you had Bedi, and then you had Prasanna, who was bringing in his riches from the as an off spinner. Venkat, a completely different off spinner to Prasanna, and then of course Chandra, who was the most original of the lot, who just could do his own thing.
It's incredible, because, and I was really lucky because I grew up in Bangalore and studied in Bangalore school and college, which meant that my cricket was quite closely. I mean, I followed Chandra and Pras very closely, and they became good friends. And then I worked in Chennai, where one became close with Venkat Raghavan, good friends. Then I went to Delhi, where Bishan was there. So it is one of those wonderful sort of happy accidents of history that I can call these four great spinners good personal friends of mine, and that's one of the things I can look back on, when I finally hang up the pen or throw the word processor away or chuck the computer under a train or whatever, and say whatever else I may or may not have done, I've at least dealt with four great spinners as good friends, and that's something to be proud of.
Is there any specific match you remember, maybe that you attended in Bangalore, like a Ranji match where which not many would have seen, where Pras and Chandra were like on a roll or something?
Well, Pras and Chandra invariably were on a roll. In fact, they had to be on a roll, otherwise, Karnataka wouldn't have got anywhere. And the year they won the Ranji Trophy and they beat Bombay here, and there's an incredible delivery from Pras, which just took the top of Gavaskar's off bail and started and Gavaskar is one of the genuinely great spinners players of spin bowling that we have produced, and to see an off spinner doing that, as the years passed and the importance of the off spinner was reduced because of the bats became heavier, the rules became slightly different, and even the casual average lower order batsman could take a chance with the off spinner, but he could never do that in a first class match to Pras, because Pras was also, I think he was probably the most intelligent bowler of the four. I know this means Bishan won't send me a New Year card, but he was probably he understood bowling. He understood his bowling, I think, better than the others understood their own bowling. Although Venkat, for example, was a very fine. I think Venkat was very badly done by. I think he would have made a great captain for India, a long-term captain. I think he was badly done by. And I also think that we played the wrong combination most of the time. And the real, if you looked at Chandra as your main attacking bowler and Venkat as the bowler, steady bowler, I wouldn't say defensive bowler, but a bowler who can hold his end up, then the real choice should have been between Pras and Bishan. I think Ajit Wadekar kind of got halfway there without getting into the Pras versus. It was easier to take a Pras versus Venkat stand, but I think balance wise it should have been a Pras versus Bishan stand, because Bishan and Pras were both attacking bowlers, both bought their wickets, were happy to buy the wickets. If you, as in the Viv Richards case, you give away 38 runs, but you've got Viv Richards, and that's a good deal. So that's but somehow that never was something that Indian captains were thought. They didn't think that through, I think.
Pras and Venkat always got classed as the off spinners, so it became the battle of the off spinners.
Yeah,
right?
It became the battle of the off spinners. Whereas if you're looking at balance wise, if you're looking at attack, defense, from a different perspective, then I think it should have been between Bishan and Pras.
In fact, that's one of the counterfactuals that you mentioned in the book as well, that had this been pitched this way, it's quite possible that Bedi could have been the one missing some of the matches and not the link between the victory tests, as you call it. That he was the single link in all
he
the
was the
victory
single.
tests
He played all of them, yes.
Where he could have probably missed out had it been viewed from a different prism. And in fact, I'm surprised that kind of counterfactual is something that you floated in this book, but I've never really read it anywhere else. Was that a fairly common topic amongst journalists, at least?
No. Nobody thought of it because it was more convenient to think of it as a battle of off spinners. And I don't know. Like Ajit, Wadekar got part of the way there by playing Venkat rather than Pras, but he didn't think. I really think that. I once did speak to Wadekar about it, and he said he'll think about it and let me know. But unfortunately, he's no more with us. No, but
Yeah.
well, it's at least it's a thought, because it made no sense to okay, you have to take it down, you to sort of take it step by step. There's no point in playing all four spinners. I mean, they played together in one test match in Edgbaston in '67, and didn't do much. And Chandra was your spearhead of the attack. There's no question about that. And Venkat was one who exactly like he did at the Oval when India won the test match in the 71 test match at the Oval. Venkat played a key role there at keeping the other end going while Chandra was taking wickets here. And Bishan came in and bowled 1 over and took a wicket, and then and give Chandra a rest, but Chandra had to come back again because the batsman had been dismissed. So there was, I think Wadekar was a part of the way there, but he didn't get there wholly, and nobody else thought about it. Nobody else had a. Then it becomes political. Then it becomes a whole lot of other elements come into it. It becomes Karnataka versus Tamil Nadu. Although. When Venkat was dropped for a test match, was going to be dropped for a test match, I think there were more posters of no Venkat, no test in Bangalore rather than in Chennai. So it's a I think basically nobody had thought things through, and precedence was all that there was. And I also think that dropping Bishan for the Bangalore test here, for example, in '74. And not playing Rajinder Goyal, who was in the team, to me it suggested that the authorities, whatever scraps they had with Bishan all along, they're also a bit scared of him. They didn't want to get into a situation where Rajinder Goyal took 5 or 6 wickets, which he would have in this test. And Bishan himself is open enough to admit that had Goyal played the test match, India might have won that match. We lost very badly to the West Indies that first match of that series. So, I mean, of course, we can all be very clever and smart after the event, but the fact is that some of the thinking was not fit perfect.
Yeah, I mean, you write about that test in the book, and that was also a test where no Bedi, no test was the famous cry. Yes. I think Bangalore crowd just had no dash, and they filled in whatever name.
Yeah. What was the current flavor of the season, or lack of non-flavor of the season.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, Goyal didn't play. Goyal, of course, never played a test for India. He's sadly no more with us. But yeah, I mean, who knows the course that series as well as Indian cricket might have taken had Goyal played that test. But coming back to Bishan, I mean, there's a lot about all the spinners in the book. So anyone interested to read more about the different spinners and the combinations, etc., please go through it in the book. But coming back to Bishan, the one thing I definitely wanted to talk about is the cover. Has this marvelous illustration, of course, which is based on the famous photo that the photographer Ken Kelly, was it?
Ken Kelly, yes.
Ken Kelly took of the Bishan Bedi in England, and that itself is a story. I would love for you to, tell that lovely story of this photographer following this cricketer for 4 months to click a photo.
No, he followed
4 years.
4 years.
4 years. Sorry, 4 years. Yeah,
yes.
my mistake. Yeah,
he followed because he saw Bishan do that wonderfully, that almost gentle, way he placed his right hand over the ball.
Yeah,
and he thought that he ought to capture that. And he followed him, and he finally got that shot. And Bishan said, "I was not even aware I was doing this." And it's such a marvelous. It's one of the great cricket photographs of a spinner just in his delivery stride. I think it's a magnificent photograph, and it also says something about the kind of professional Ken Kelly was. I mean, to chase the ball. And Bishan has often said, when I used to look around and there he was, and I'd keep telling him, you again, you here. But, he kept at it. Kelly kept at it, and wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, there's a geometric perfection to this image, actually. I mean, I'm holding the book in my hand, and of course you can't see it. But, the right thumb basically is almost, it's providing that little bit of anchor for the ball. It's almost like it's measuring a certain thing in the ball, and as Suresh writes in the book, it's telling Bedi instinctively that okay, I've got the right position so that the ball can get the purchase. And amazingly, Bishan Bedi had no idea that the fact that he was doing that just before the ball was delivered. And back then, of course, it was not the era of television. It was more the era. The television wasn't yet big then. But for a photographer to actually observe this from his, from the beyond the boundary line, and to follow Bedi for 4 years to get that perfect photo, it's that tells you about the craft of photography back then as well, which has is amazing. Taught you so much about the game when you saw the cricket photos.
Exactly. I mean, it's a testimony to great professionalism. First of all, I mean, just the fact that this is what is there. Now I just have to, ensure that I get the photograph so that everybody knows. I think it's magnificent.
So I first read about this photograph in the book, like when I first read it. And many years later, when Christian Ryan wrote that book, Feeling is the thing that happens in 1,000th of a second, where he talks about that one particular photograph that Patrick Egard took of Jeff Thompson, where he knew that his back arm, his arm going behind was doing something unique, but he didn't figure out what it was. And then he catches it right between the legs, right under his crotch. Yeah. And that was so unique that, at least in this case, the photographer knew what was happening and he was looking for evidence. Yes. Where the photographer had an intuition and he had to find the evidence to kind of, theorize that intuition, so to say. So that reminded me a lot of this photograph when I read about it later.
No, I think that's another. I mean, except in the Ryan book, I don't think cricket photographers have been given enough credit for what they have done over the years, because in the pre-television era, it is always a photograph. I mean, Solkar catching Alan Knott in that famous 71 Oval Test match, or before that, of course, the famous Trumper stepping out to drive.
Or that run out in that tight test, the final run out.
The final run out in the tight test with the arms raised and stuff like that. Wonderful. I mean, photographers. In fact, one of the things we were working on before they packed up Western India was a special section on cricket photography, where we spoke about all these famous and the magnificent picture of Jaunty Rhodes running out Inzamamul Haq in the World Cup, which was taken by V.V. Krishnan. Yeah, and there's of course Shil Berry's famous favorite photograph, which he's published in his book, of Hammond cover driving, and the wicketkeeper, his hands beautifully placed, and it's as a frame, as a balanced frame. It's like a great artist who understood balance and what. The weight and the where the weight went, to use Gary Sobers's famous line, and it's but I don't think photographers have been given enough credit. I mean, I think Patrick Eagers has done as much for cricket journalism as anybody you can name. I mean Neville Cardus or anybody, but I don't think even Patrick has been given enough credit for the contributions to the game.
Yeah, we actually have been really hoping to get V.V. Krishnan on this podcast. Hopefully that will happen very soon. And, we hope to also we get more photographers so that we can they can be spotlighted as well. Because, so many of them have kept the romance of the game alive simply by their photos. We have seen their photos and talked about it for days on end, So, I brought up the cover of the book, but let's talk about the book itself. When the idea came to you, was it always there? And, what was the origin of this book?
Oh, that's interesting. The origin of the book. Okay, let me look at it sort of chronologically. I think the first book I wanted to write on the game was a book on the tight test, following the excellent example of Jack Fingleton, who wrote a whole book on the first tight test, on the Brisbane tight test. I thought when I had reported the Chennai tight test, and I thought that I should write a book. And for some reason, it didn't happen. I mean, I can't quite put my finger on why it didn't happen. There was another occasion when, on our first tour of South Africa, when India first went there, a very senior publisher wanted me to do a book, but neither of us, took it forward. I think publishers those days wanted a bit of kowtowing and a bit of, yes sir, 3 bags full kind of response. And I was young and I was far more arrogant than, I was, obviously I am now, but, and I wasn't going to do that. So I think two sort of planned books fell by the wayside. But Bishan was somebody who was always in my mind. I mean, my sort of, I used to think then that if somebody wanted me to write a book and said, right now, I want a book in the next 3 months, then I could immediately sit down and do a Bishan book because of, So the writing of the book took a while simply because I was lazy. Other things happened. I became an editor and, at Indian Express, and had other, my time was taken up by other things. And then finally this person came and said, we want a book. Anything you write, we want a book. What will you write on? And then I said, yes, Bishan Bedi, because it's always been in my head. So yeah, that's as far as the genesis of the book itself goes. The work for the book is, I suppose, as you know, I mean, anybody who has written, anybody who's been a journalist knows that work is always an ongoing process, which means that you're always, the book, various books are always inside you because of experience. You've been doing this, that, and the other. Then it's only a question of bringing it all down to a kind of a focal point. And it worked well with Bishan because, the Bishan book, because I had just left Chennai then. My son was, growing up. We needed to, and we had built a house in Bangalore. So we said, listen, let's at least stay in the house for a little while, because I knew that very quickly after his, graduation, my son would disappear, go abroad or whatever. And so I said, let's pump some memories into him, while he's young. So that's what we did. So we shifted from Chennai and came to Bangalore, and so that's when the actual sort of process started. And Karthika, who was a publisher then with Penguin, wonderful lady who's also very keenly interested in cricket and sport, and has published some really lovely books. And I got together, and then we then it was only a question of how much to leave out, how much to how much extra. How do you know you've come to the end of the book? That sort of, I think I've mentioned somewhere about the abstract artist's dilemma. When do I know that the painting is over? Can I add another squiggle here? Can I add another color there? Will it look better if I, remove the green and put a white or something? I don't know. So that's really, because when you know something, when you worked at something over so many years, and then it's a question of chipping away at what you don't think at that stage you don't think is important. I mean, if I write a book, if I wrote the Bishan biography today, it would be a completely different book, and that's generally how it is. I mean, you know that you've written a novel. I don't think you can say that you got the idea at a particular time, but the work for it is a lifelong thing. I mean, it's you over a period. So that's exactly
absolutely. How it is. Yeah, totally agree. One thing that struck me was that you said you felt that you could write the book very quickly, and that I think is that what many people think. But then when you actually get down to it, there are so many multiple aspects for you to consider, right? And it's very clear that you have also taken a great deal of delight in going through the archives and learning things about him that you maybe had missed, that is skipped your mind, and also speaking to people. I mean, you've written about how generous he was with his time as well as his family's time, learning about a young Bishan Bedi from people around him, and it's such a rewarding experience in itself, right? Just reporting on the book.
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, a lovely story about his teacher in school, Uma Bell, who used to wear a particular brand of talcum powder, which which Bishan loved so much that he continues to wear it now. I mean, he uses the same. It's a lovely little sort of thing about that tells you as much about Bedi as anything else.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how senses, right? Your smell, things you hear. Suddenly, a few years ago, I remember going back to my school where I studied, and just getting that smell of that chalk and the dust and everything. It transports you.
Oh,
you're
yes.
like you're 10 again, or you're 12 again. You're like, oh, okay, I know this place. I know exactly what is going on here.
Yeah, this is the 150th birth anniversary of Marcel Proust, who wrote one magnificent book on just
Memory.
that, on memory, on get and the Madeleine sort of setting him off for, sitting in his whatever cork-lined bedroom and writing.
Remembrance of things past. I mean, one thing that we must touch on, though, which I didn't know about until I read this book, is that Bedi was a teenage prodigy. I mean, we often know about Tendulkar making his debut at such a young age, and everybody going crazy about young Tendulkar. But here you have this person who's playing at 15, who's playing his Ranji Trophy match at 15. I mean, this is like ridiculously prodigious.
And the amazing thing was, I think he hit the right note straight away. Because he says he never had a issue. I mean, because of his action, because of the smoothness of his action, and the fact that he never had to strain, he never really had an issue with injury connected to the bowling itself. And right from the beginning, without any sort of coaching or without any, he just picked up a ball. I mean, the famous Cardus line about he gave the ball to God, gave Rhodes the ball and said, go and bowl, or whatever. So it is pretty much like that, because one of the people I spoke to used the exact same phrase. I don't even think he was aware of the sort of reference. He said God put the ball in Bishan's hand and said, now go and bowl. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, he knew from the start. I mean, it took a bit of time to, the fast bowling and the googly and all that sort of thing. But even then, his bowling action was perfect. There was nothing, there was a smoothness about it that didn't need to be changed at all in any way. And that's also amazing, because there was no real cricket background as such. It's not as if his father was. I think his father played a bit of tennis, which he also started playing initially. But there was no. It's virtually like a Martian landing at Wimbledon and playing like Federer or something. It in a way it doesn't make sense at all.
It doesn't, and one can even understand, batting prodigies, because batsmen at that age have already have most of the things required for batting, but spinner, is gradually. I mean, usually it's a gradual progression.
True.
And even for the finger at the age of 15 to have such supple wrists and the fingers. I mean, you write about how he played marbles and he sort of strengthened his fingers, but even then, to have a 15-year-old playing a bowling spin in a first-class match is just boggles the mind.
Yeah, he also used to wash his towel and dry them, squeeze them for his face. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that sort of thing was imposed on the subsequently imposed on those
the
activities. Yeah, just sort of to give it a kind of continuity. But the marbles part was definitely true. And the fact is that till when I last met him, he still loved to wash his own clothes. So I suppose there is something in that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And then you write about his career and the early parts of his career, and one of the things that really strikes me in that bit, like the late '60s and the early '70s, is first of all, one of the things that strikes me is how crazy cricket was at that time, with every second match being affected by a riot. It's almost like
Yeah.
people just went to cricket to riot. It's,
Well, he started his career in that famous Eden Gardens Test match, which led to a huge riot. And the riots also meant, because, and this is something that Tiger has also told me separately, is that you were then expected to go ahead and play whatever the condition of the wicket, whatever the condition, because for the greater good of the game, which I think really meant for the greater good of the administrators, because I mean the administrators were the ones who really screwed up the the business of ticket, issuing tickets and stuff like that at Eden Gardens. But the players had to pay for it, and I think that is a strain that you can see that continues in Indian cricket even now. I mean, ultimately the players have to pull the administrators out of a hole, and they've been in various holes for purely selfish reasons.
Yeah, I mean, at least now the consolation is that the players are just, they're taken care of so well, and they have nothing, financially, or at least most of the players. I mean, there are other players,
Yeah,
of course, but most of the top
basically,
players
yes,
are taken care of. But back then, the players were not getting paid, but the players were also being, moved, thrown around here and there, tossed about by the administrators. So it was a double whammy for them.
Yes, I mean there was a time when one of his many inquiries that he faced, Bishan had to then, I think he was playing in a Dilip match, so he had to travel back by train and sleep in the luggage rack or some such. It's a horrible. I mean, when you think of some of the things that these guys had to come through, I mean, it's the commentary on Indian cricket is there's something that. That puts you off Indian cricket, basically. If you think of the way that, what was out there was the players, and the people who were suffering were also the players. What was in the background, pulling the strings or whatever, the officials and administrators, nobody ever had they didn't know. The thing was, in most cases, they didn't know what these guys were doing.
Yeah, and the other common thread that runs entirely through Bedi's career is the controversies, right? I mean, part of it because he was so outspoken about it and he would not take any nonsense, but also because there were people trying to constantly get back at him because of what had happened then. And, as you say, the administrator's life in India is a long one, and they know they can strike whenever they want.
They're in no hurry. They're
in no hurry. And here's this, now, not only in India, but now he gets into trouble in England as well. After that whole Vaseline controversy in 1976, he loses a contract in Northamptonshire. And then people are accusing him of chucking. I mean, of all the people to accuse of chucking, you accuse Bishan Bedi of chucking.
That's truly ridiculous. I mean, that's how ridiculous things had become at that stage.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite the counterfactual. Of course, you think of had a lot of that not happened, and he was allowed to focus only on his bowling. He might have actually ended up with so many more wickets. You never know.
Oh, yes, I think also, but Bishan doesn't agree with me. But I think also that he played too much cricket in England. I mean, I think there was a phase when, when he went to, even when he went to Australia, although he got 30 odd wickets, he was still not the Bishan of old. And by the time he went to Pakistan, he had actually lost the armor, the same armor we were talking about that he could bowl so easily when he was 50 odd years. At some point in Pakistan, he lost the armor, and I think that a lot of that had to do with the fact that he overbowled. I mean, he was playing cricket in England, then he had to play cricket in India. He had to play the international series. It was I think he played an enormous amount of cricket, and I think that finally told on him, because I mean, when he finished, he was 33. And in sort of classic cases, spinners are you're looking at 38, 39, even 40-year-old spinners. I mean, Tricos was bowling off spin past 40. So I think he may not have balanced out the sort of the sheer amount of cricket that he played. That finally told on him, I think.
Yeah, I mean, these days, of course, there's a controversy every month, and people make a big deal about it, but move on. But something like that Vaseline controversy in 1976 must have been so big at that time, of just a few newspapers and a few things. I mean, we're talking about it all these years later, but just back then, for Bishan Bedi to accuse an English team, I mean, we're talking about the 70s, where the colonial baggage was still quite evident, and England was still considered the mother country for many people. For him to accuse them of tampering with the ball, and to accuse John Lever of what he did, it must have been, it must have been on the scale of, 2008, what happened in Australia or something like that. I mean, I'm saying the noise around it.
Oh, yes. It was such a huge thing, really, because what happened also was that the some of the English players, especially some of the county players, said, yeah, I mean, we do this sort of thing quite often. I mean, I'm paraphrasing here. We do this sort of thing quite often. It happens all the time. And the board was not willing to strictly back Bedi to the hilt. So there was Bishan standing and, saying all these things. But at no point, in fact, I think it was very cleverly done. I think it was it Barrington or some English player said, "Oh, thank you. I must thank the Indian board for accepting that it was an accident, and it was passed on." And the Indian board hadn't actually said that, and they didn't have the guts to turn around and say, "Listen, we didn't say that." You know what I'm saying? So this is as you said, this is definitely a kind of a colonial hang up, and India had to pay a lot. India had to pay a heavy price for that kind of attitude. The Indian administrators doing what they did. For example, on the '74 tour of England, they changed the rule that allowed for and didn't allow for more than 5 fielders in the offside on the onside, immediately reducing our spinners to half what they were. So
and the spinners didn't even know about it till they landed in England.
Not just spinners, even the captain Ajit Wadekar didn't know when he landed in England, and then they were told, and then the rule was done away with at the end of the season. So you can't really blame Bishan for shouting and screaming as much as he did. Some of the other players also did, but privately and off the record. Bishan just happened to have the confidence to go ahead and say whatever he said on record. There was no off record, on record as far as Bishan was concerned. Bishan was always on record.
The other distinction that you draw, right? One is some people spoke behind the doors and so on. The other distinction that you so beautifully mark about Bedi's controversies is the fact that he was the first one who was fighting for other people, not just for himself. And you make a comparison with Lala Amarnath, for instance. So I had a question about it. A couple of things. One is that he was the first one to battle for the players, battle for a larger cause. Yeah. And that could be against the board, that could be against the MCC, that could be against a perceived unsportsman sort of West Indies team, for instance, when he chose to declare. And that was a statement of intent as much as anything. So in some ways, it connects very well with what Chapley did in Australia, for instance, where he was fighting for poor wages, poor treatment of the players, despite the board making a lot of money. So when I was reading that, I was thinking a lot about Chapley because that's what is more popularized. There is a myth building about that aspect of Chapley's captaincy. But at the same time, what was dichotomous for me was Chapley kind of embraced World Series cricket because of that reason. And Bedi, who stood with him on all those sort of causes for the cricketers, actually took the opposite stance and said, I'm not going to embrace this because it's not good for cricket.
Exactly, so, because Bishan wasn't, again, Chappell's argument was, players not paid enough. So as soon as somebody pays me enough, I'm happy to move there. Bishan's argument wasn't that. Bishan's argument was that this is against the spirit of cricket. This is not cricket. And therefore, if John Lever was using Vaseline and bowling at me, I'm not arguing just because it's affecting my team. I'm arguing because it goes against the spirit of the game. So for Bishan, I think it was a game that was more important than personalities or teams or anything else connected with it. And I think that really is the difference. And what you say is right. I mean that comes out.
In fact, he even, I mean, of all the people, you would think Bishan Bedi would not have a problem with Gavaskar rejecting the MCC membership because, with Bedi's history with England and all that. But Bishan Bedi takes serious offense to Gavaskar not taking the
That
MCC
is true.
membership.
It takes serious offense. Bishan can always turn around and say like, Whitman, I'm large, I contain multitudes.
But it is true, right? He did. Like he took on the board, he took on MCC, he took on so many sort of different things, different strands. And like the other thing that you mentioned is the 74 series. One is the rule change, but even otherwise, Bedi had a poor series. But in fact, that you capture quite beautifully in the sense that for someone who's celebrated for his artistry and whose spirit of playing, you're also saying that you can't be $1 million bowler all the time. Sometimes the team wants you to defend. But Bedi was absolutely clear, this is the way I play. And a batsman can't say that, right? But perhaps a Sehwag at a later stage could have said it and gotten away. But otherwise, I can't imagine a batsman getting away with a statement like that. But
I mean, they dropped Kapil Dev after he played one poor stroke and got out in a test match. They dropped him from the next test, which meant that his 131 tests, which might otherwise have been in a row, 132 tests, he had a break after 60 odd tests. And exactly as you say, the batsman can't make the same thing, the same comment and say, listen, I answer to a higher authority, so I will play my game. I mean, and I will bat for 3 days in a row, and it doesn't matter what happens. So that's not fair. I don't think that's a. You've got to balance that with. But Bishan's argument that. I will not change my. Because this is the bowler I am, and I should be able. I am. If I am good enough, I should be able to get the batsman bowling the way I do, rather than bowling the way you want me to, or compromising on the high art that I bring into the game. And it is an argument.
But it seems like people had a fancy for that. People bought into that vision partly. That's why he could get away with it, right?
Which is absolutely true. Yes. There were sufficient. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There was sufficient number of people who believed that, so long as they didn't have to do it themselves, and therefore, it was seen as a exactly as I said, answering to a higher calling. And you can have an argument saying that, therefore he was you would say in another context he was a man of the sport rather than a man of the country. I mean, you can justify that, but of course we know that that is not really the case.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things of the book is that it brings out these contradictions so beautifully. I mean, the things that you hear about Bishan Bedi is that he flighted the ball. He clapped when the opponents scored off him. But what I found lovely in your book, which I'd never thought about before, is that the fact that he's clapping also means there's a selfish motive to it, because he wants to get a wicket. So right. He's happy that the batsman is attacking him. It's not necessary that he's just saying, oh, great cricket, applauding the opponent. There is also saying, okay, I'm probably going to get you next.
I'm going to bowl the same. I'm going to bowl what looks like the same ball again and then see what happens. I mean, exactly. As we were talking about the journalist in Delhi who discovered that dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, there's this YouTube clip that, is wonderful to watch of Bedi bowling to Kim Hughes in that 77 series, when Hughes is basically going after him. But then there's that ball, that quicker one that gets him bowled. And Bedi is you can actually see him, very happy for Hughes. But I never thought of the point of, okay, there's also the fact that, okay, he's clapping because he also knows his chance of getting a wicket are increasing with each time.
True.
And the point of multitudes is so right, so appropriate here, because we can't simply dismiss this as a deceit. He's not clapping to deceive the batsman. He's clapping genuinely because he's appreciating.
No, it is genuine. That is genuine.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 But it's also his confidence. It's also a confidence that I know I'll get you. You keep playing that way, I'll get you. So that multitude point is so like apt for him that you can't distinguish one from the other.
You can't. He's they're as much a part of him as any single element.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the point about the spirit of cricket. I mean, we spoke about that test in Jamaica where he had to declare because there were three of the players were in the hospital, yes. And his Michael Holding and the other bowlers were instigating a sort of a what is called a bloodbath at Sabina Park. And he, of course, people, David Frith, you write about how he said it was a statement against this short pitch bowling, but at the same time, it could have also just been helplessness. Like, what do you do when your players are not even there? You have to declare. But I don't know. I mean, I didn't see it in the book, but there is this story, and you can maybe confirm if it is just myth or anecdote. Apparently, in that match, Bedi actually made a complaint to Douglas Sanghu, who was the umpire, or maybe it was Ralph Gossian, one of the umpires. He made a complaint, and the reply that he got from the umpires was that, Mr. Bedi, you are only playing here. We live here. Which basically means that if we say anything, we are finished.
I've heard that story, but I don't know. I've not been able to confirm that.
Yeah, I mean, and that brings out, I mean, if it happened, who knows if it happened, but it brings out the classic clash, right, between how Bedi thinks that this is a game that needs to be played in a certain way, and then you have umpire Douglas Sanghu telling him it's all fine, but at the end of the day, we also live here with the people.
You guys are going back. You're going to catch the next flight home, and where does it leave me?
Exactly. So yeah, so that was the thing. But 77, I brought up the Kim Hughes example, but I want to touch on that tour about how I mean, it was of course a famous tour for various reasons because Packer was having his World Series on the side. This was the establishment tour, which Bedi was playing, and they had brought back Bob Simpson and things. But it's clear that on that tour, Bedi was like such an extremely popular personality in Australia, right? And you generally associate Australian crowds with being hostile and things, but they took to Bedi. They seem to have taken to Bedi so well, and Greg Chappell talks about it. I mean, Greg Chappell, who didn't play, but he still remembers how popular Bedi was in that tour.
Yes, I think that went back to that World 11 tour in 71, 72, when Bishan was hugely popular, and the Australian parts, in some parts of Australia, the crowd actually booed the local player when Bishan was not able to field the ball or the ball. And every time Bishan batted, there were huge cheers. And every time Bishan came on to bowl, and somebody asked him, I think one of the players asked him, so you flew down all your fans from Melbourne? I think this was in Sydney. And Bishan said, yeah, I gave them all free tickets, so they could come and cheer.
Yeah, there is a YouTube video actually of the end of it might be the Melbourne Test actually, or maybe it's the Sydney Test, where there's the presentation and there's Simpson and Bedi, and the crowd is enveloping them, and there's this genuine warmth when Bedi is talking, and they're all just they want to get a piece of him.
No, absolutely. That tour, I mean, he was also successful, which meant that he was far more relaxed naturally, and I think when that should have been a 4-1 series win for India, because the first two tests they lost very narrowly, I think by 16 runs and 2 wickets, I think the first two tests, and then the next two tests they won by an innings and over 100 runs the next time, and then they lost the final test by under 50 runs. So they could have easily won the first two tests, which meant that it would have been at least a 4-1 series, and it was extremely he led an extremely popular Indian team through Australia at a time, as you said, when Packer was chipping away at cricket in another part of Australia. Packer was not allowed to play on the official test grounds in Australia, so it was important. That series was important. I mean, it's the way sort of Bishan stood as a bulwark against Packer is an interesting story in itself. I mean, when he was in Pakistan on the previous tour, and the Pakistan, Asif Iqbal was recruiting players for Packer, and some of the Packer officials came down there.
I'm very sure that if Bishan had signed up, half the Indian team would have easily signed up. And Bishan as captain made a big issue of it, of not signing up, of telling his players what it meant to sign up. And I think that way, and the fact that he led this very popular Indian team through Australia, the next series, ensured that India did not lose any player to Packer at all.
Yeah, I mean, you do mention that he does foresee Packer basically making peace with the TV, with the board executives, and then finally moving on, which happened.
Yes, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, so that's quite perceptive of him back then to have seen it so early, and you know, so yeah. So after that tour, of course, you touch on really bring out to the fore his contributions for Delhi and North Zone and how he ended up. It's interesting how what he perhaps couldn't do for India when he was captain, he ended up doing so well for North Zone and Delhi. And, I thought of it and I felt that what if Bedi had been for India what he had been for North Zone? I mean, I wonder if had the administration cooperated with him, I wonder if things would have worked out that way.
That's interesting because North Zone, there was a little more, he could do a little more than he could do. I mean, in terms of getting players, he could get the Amarnath brothers to come from Punjab. He could get Chetan Chauhan to come from Maharashtra. Arun Lal was in the university. So he sat down and physically built a team that he could call his own, and then very, very deliberately he took Delhi into the Ranji Trophy finals and won the final. Now I don't know if you can do such a thing with an Indian team, because even as important an Indian captain as Tiger Pataudi told me that no Indian captain can get the team he wants. And I doubt even if Virat Kohli today, who's probably the most powerful Indian captain we've had, I don't know, maybe Sunil Gavaskar, but certainly Virat Kohli is the most powerful Indian captain we've had. And even I don't know even if Virat Kohli can do things just exactly the way he wants to do in terms of getting the players he wants. It's that's one of the things about. I mean, England are now looking at a football type manager in a single person deciding everything, which may or may not work. But in India, it's too fast and too disparate. The cricket around the country for one man to be in control of a whole lot of things like selection and the progress and that sort of thing. So I don't know. I don't know even if, to be honest, even if Virat is able to do that today.
Yeah, true. I mean, but the bits about the North Zone and Delhi, it really brings out the facets of Bedi's personality, like the mentoring, the way the young players looked up to him, the kind of rock solid support that they always had with somebody like Bedi there. And simply to, we take it for granted now that, Delhi is always a very, very strong team, but it wasn't so back then. And they had never won a Ranji Trophy until Bedi came and actually helped them do it. So the
players talk of Bedi in the way that I've heard some of the West Indies players talk about Frank Worrell. I think Madan Lal, I think it was Madan Lal who told me that, he was our captain both off the field and on the field, and we would look at him to see which fork he picked up, how he held his mug of coffee, and I think that tells you something about the kind of mentor that Bishan was, and this is always a part of Bishan, that it is never just the cricket. Cricket is a means to a fuller and better life. The lessons that you learn in cricket have to be applied to life, and to a large extent, as you said, he did that with Delhi. But of course, even there later things began to fall apart, and he had all these terrible issues. But I think In fact, he says that, the usual Delhi-Bombay kind of rivalry, North versus West kind of rivalry. He says that Ajit, my relationship with Ajit Wadekar, which was never very strong, which was never very close, probably was the incentive for the North players to defeat the West, or for Delhi to defeat Bombay, and therefore it had a good effect on Delhi players. So you can't hold it against me that Wadekar and I never got along. So that's one way of looking at it.
In fact, you write about that moment where there was this run out, right? When either the West Zone or the Bombay players basically pulled off a run out, even though the batsman was thinking that it was just a boundary.
Ball had crossed the boundary, yes.
Yeah, thinking the ball had crossed the boundary, but it hadn't, and they pulled out the run out without the batsman even knowing that there was a chance of a run out. And you say that was probably like the inflection point of the Delhi-Bombay relationship. It was very interesting.
And that Northwest, reached this. You can't say apogee. Whatever the opposite of that is.
Nadir.
Nadir. When Raman Lamba was being chased around in a Dulip Trophy match by Rashid Patil wielding a stump, which I think is I think it's definitely the worst sight I have ever seen on a cricket field.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, nothing can get worse than a cricketer running with a stump behind another cricketer with a bat. Yes. I mean, that's just 1 second away from a absolutely disastrous situation, I guess. Yeah. Of course, the stereotype now that everyone associates Bedi with is what has happened post his career. I mean, many people who don't know much about his career only have read and heard about what he has said in the press and when he was manager, or even later talking about Murali as a dacoit or whatever, and which you mentioned, of course, is probably a bit lost in translation because he is transliterating, or whatever that word is, from Hindi or Punjabi to English. But the fact that the whole thing about the Indian team should jump into the Pacific Ocean, which he actually
that's not
didn't.
What he said.
Exactly.
Which I clarified in the book.
Which he didn't say. Which he said, if somebody asked, if they want to jump in, I won't stop them.
I won't stop them. Which is completely different. Yes.
Nuanced difference there. But I mean, it's the fact is that he has been like that throughout. It is not something that he has developed as in a post-career avatar or something that he's looking for popularity or anything. This is him.
Yes, this is him. This is the full package. You take the full package or not at all. That's up to you. But this is the full package.
Yeah. And interestingly, he's on social media. I mean, at least he's off and on social media. But on social media, he's not firing blanks. He's not firing all the time. He's occasionally taking it easy and this thing. But then suddenly, once every 3 months, he will come out with the rocket.
then we know that all's well.
We know that all's
well.
But
that's actually a curious sort of character development as well, right? In fact, in the book, he says that he actually started playing cricket as a way to stop being shy and socialize with people and so on. And he, in fact, points out, was that the tour to Australia as part of the World 11 or something where he got this attention and then he realized that he's getting this attention. And he sees that as a reinforcement for whatever he's doing. And he found the confidence to be more expressive from there on. So for someone who's actually become that during the course of his cricketing career, it's a bit like Sachin, right? We saw him grow up as an adult in front of our eyes as a cricketer. So it is like Sibi mentioned, it's equally true of Bedi as well, that he's remarkably taken to that role and stuck to it all his life from there on. He was not a natural to start with.
No, he was an extremely shy and diffident kind of a person. And his nickname is Paji, which is, of course, older brother in Punjabi. But now he's called Paji, and everybody thinks it's because, it's not that. It was because on his early tours, in his early game, he used to call everybody else in the team Paji. So that was his nickname.
Okay. So he was so reverential to everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's
amazing.
I mean, so that became his nickname.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, It's a lot of times, especially in these times when cricket and politics are really meshing on a daily basis, there is quite a bit of calls about, why don't the Indian cricketers speak out? Where is our Mohammad Ali? Where is our Colin Kaepernick? But he's right here. He's just called Bishan Bedi. He has been there he has been there with you all the time, isn't he?
Yes, I have some sympathy for the players who don't speak out, but not a lot of sympathy for players who could speak out, who could afford to speak out but don't. No, there are two sets of players. I mean, if some youngster or somebody who's just come into the scene, speaks out, it could be extremely, disastrous. But there are enough people who know that they are absolutely, established, and yet they don't speak. I mean, my biggest grouse against Sachin Tendulkar has always been that he never spoke out at a time when cricket was going through an extremely poor phase, when match fixing was, and bowling actions. We never really got to know what Sachin thought of all these things while they were happening. Of course, we still don't know. I mean, that's a separate issue. But at a time when he might have had some influence on the game, because he was this number one batsman in the world, and he had this wonderful image of clean image. So when he said something, it would have made an impact, and he didn't. And that's one side of the argument. The other side of the argument is that he's fully aware, as is Virat Kohli, and Virat and I have spoken about this quite often, about the fact that they don't know what could be twisted into, what kind of a narrative. So why take a chance? So I suppose there is that argument also. But I still prefer the guy who speaks out. It's perfectly fine for you and me to sit here and say that. But in their lives, it's a question of livelihood. It's a question of the future of the game and stuff like that. So yeah, there is some sympathy, but there's also this feeling that our Muhammad Alis are not punching hard enough.
Yeah, I mean, Sharda Ugra wrote a piece, I think last year or something, where she said one can forgive the current cricketer for not speaking out because they have so much at stake. But once a cricketer retires, the stakes automatically go down. I mean, of course, you can argue that some are working in commentary, some are working in this, but many of them are big enough names to say the basic things that we expect. I mean, It's not like we are expecting them to take like a hardened political stance, but to just come out and say that this is wrong or this should be done better is not going to really ruin their careers.
That's really the right expression. Basic things, yes.
Yes. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, Bishan Bedi is somebody who has never shirked on that front. I think Ramchandra Guha has written about that as well quite extensively. And in this book by Suresh, you can read so many instances of Bedi, both as an active player, as well as a former player, as well as an administrator, manager, just, calling things as they are and not really worrying about the consequences.
The other amazing thing about this book, what he documents in this book about Bedi's sort of constant rebellious attitude towards administrators, is not just that he was doing it so frequently. Perhaps because he was doing it so frequently, even when it was twisted out of sort of context, he didn't pay a heavy price because he had done it so many times that once or twice he didn't mind. More importantly, even in an ecosystem like Indian cricket, he didn't really pay a big price for it. I mean, he missed a test, he missed the odd sort of big post or so on, but he continued. There was something about Bedi, the cricketer, that was so compelling, that was so arresting. And to some extent, even his rebellious sort of stance had some merit for administrators to tolerate it, to live with it, to kind of punish him, but not really punish him, like not playing Goel, for instance. It's a very clear sign that they wanted Bedi to come back and take his place. So in that sense, it's quite amazing that he got away with so much in a place like Indian cricket.
I also think, this is, I've been thinking what I thought about this much later. I also think that Bishan is an interesting combination of an establishment man who's anti-establishment.
which comes back to the question you were asking earlier about Gavaskar's MCC membership, which he turned down and upset Bishan. Now, Bishan is establishment enough to think that turning down an MCC membership is just not done. You know what I'm saying? So it's a very interesting combination. It's an unusual combination.
Just like his bowling was high art, his thinking is high establishment.
Exactly. Yeah, that's that. You serve the higher master. You serve the game itself, not the people who either administered it or played it or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, his bar for administrators is extremely high. I mean, you brought up the Ian Chappell example, Mahesh. Ian Chappell, I think, believes administrators are just bad, full stop. Yeah. I mean, he doesn't believe that the administrators are going to get any better. So he's coming at it from a cynical standpoint. But Bedi, on the other hand, is like, the administrators have to get better. This is their game. What are they doing? Yeah.
There's greater hope in what Bishan does than in what Ian Chappell did.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think, that they're similar, but yet vastly different in where they're coming from. Yeah.
No, I was just thinking about when Suresh was talking about the high establishment point, I was just thinking about it. Even when he took on MCC in England in the Vaseline affair, it was actually to go one up on their own game, which is to say you're playing against the spirit of cricket. He's not saying spirit of cricket is your own invented bullshit. He's saying you are not adhering to your own code.
Yes, it's a bit like when Tiger's father was playing in the Bodyline series, and the instruction was no fielder should show any fear. And when Jardine himself at some point turned his shoulder or something when a batsman played a shot, Tiger's father Iftikhar Ali Pataudi said, "Skipper, you seem to have forgotten your own instructions." So he made a test match. He made a debut on test match in his test match.
100 on test debut.
Yeah, and then didn't play enough matches.
Yeah, I think Jardine says, right, at least he says in the documentary, who knows if he says really, that you will never play for England again or something like that. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think this was good. I mean, we covered a lot of good ground, learned a lot about Bishan Bedi. For all of you listening, please pick up the book. It's a fascinating insight into the man. Many of you might not have seen Bedi play, and, the internet has only a few clips of him. But this book really brings out the joy, the poetry, the romance, and the very essence of Bishan Bedi, the cricketer. So, Suresh, again, thank you for this book, and thank you for joining us.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Sid and Mahesh. It's been good fun, great fun, in fact.
Yeah, and also I will also link another long piece that Suresh wrote about Chandra for the Cricket Monthly. A beautiful, beautiful piece, an encounter. And you can, with, again, somebody who he has known for a very long time. And also I'll link other Suresh columns about Indian cricket at that time and spinners as well. So please read all of that and enjoy. And Suresh, hopefully as a companion work to Bedi's book, there will be a book on Chandra at some point.
Chandra, Vishy, all of these wonderful players who deserve full-length books. Yeah.
Many are in line. Hopefully you can pick up one at some point.
I just want to add this on the book. While the book is about Bishan, there's sort of beautiful character sketches of all the great spinners of that era. Particularly, I mean, Suresh did mention about his friendship with all those players earlier. Not only was he a beneficiary of that, as readers of his columns, we were all beneficiaries of that because he was able to offer insights about those players. There's, I have learned a lot more about Venkat by reading Suresh's columns than anything else, to be honest. So there's a lot of nice character sketches about the great spinners beyond Bishan. In fact, I was a little surprised that for someone with the kind of cricketers that he grew up watching and he had access to working in the southern part of India, like a Prasanna or a Venkat, for instance, would have been a more ready-made subject for you to first write a book on. So that was going to be my question at the beginning, but now that we are at the end, I'll probably ask it now. Why Bishan instead of Prasanna or Venkat first?
I really don't have an answer to that. I mean, Pras, for example, was a great hero of not only my hero, but he was a great family hero. My parents, who were obsessed with cricket, my mother was, a great cricket fan, and told me recently that once, many years ago, I must have been, I can't even remember, maybe 5 or 6, and my mother wanted to watch Gary Sober's play. So they left me with a friend. They left me and my little sister with a friend, and Mom and Dad went to watch Gary Sober's play. Unfortunately, Gary Sobers didn't play that match. I think he didn't play that South Zone game, but just the fact that that and in that 67 Australia series, when we went to Australia after 20 years, my mother kept scores. So cricket has been a huge big thing in the family, and Pras seemed to be the natural sort of candidate, but I really don't know why Bishan, to be perfectly honest with you, Mahesh.
In Pras style, I think we all are asking you one more book, Suresh.
And I hope I shall not respond like the other part of Pras's books and say over.
Absolutely, yeah. So that was great. Hopefully we'd love to have you back here, Suresh, at some point to talk about various other aspects of Indian cricket. I mean, as somebody who has seen so much, we would love to
always
pick
happy
more
to,
of your.
Always happy to.
Yeah. So I'll let you know. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mahesh.
The series, they're going to get back for 2. India home. Lords goes wide.